Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Imbuh Mukti and my student number is 2005086081. So here I want to explain about sentence processing. So the first is about two-stage models of parsing. Garden path theory assumes that the parser begins to build a syntactic structure as soon as the lexical processor begins to deliver information about word categorized. The theory is called the two-stage model of syntax parsing because syntax parsing occurs in two distinct stages of processing, then builds its syntactic sequence structure. The idea that listeners construct the wrong structure for some temporarily ambiguous sentences while they are processing ambiguous passages. Spot their mistakes when they encounter confusing information, and then revise their initial syntax and semantics. Sits at the heart of the PET approach, guidance for sentence processing and interpretation. And then the process is the first, the lexical identify the category represented in the input, and the output is fed into the syntactic parsing mechanism. Once the syntactical structure is constructed, the actual words in the sentence can be assigned a position, and the entire configuration can be sent to the thematic interpreter. The task of the thematic interpreter is to apply a set of rules that assign roles to each element in the syntax tree based on their position in the tree and how they are connected to other words. And then constraint-based model of parsing. There is a difference between a garden path and a constraint-based parser. So garden path parser relies solely on word category information for its input, but a constraint-based parser can use a much wider variety of cues to decide what structure to build and the relative emphasis to place on each alternative structure. Constraint-based parsers are often referred to as single-stage models because the lexical, syntactic, and semantic process are all seen to take place concurrently, and constraint-based parsers can pursue multiple structural possibilities simultaneously. And then constraint-based parsers often adopt parallel distributed processing or neural network architectures, similar to those on which lexical processing models are based. And then constraint-based parsers represent different aspects of a sentence, including its syntactic structure, as the activation pattern spreads over a large number of interconnected processing units. And then argument structure hypothesis. So the argument structure hypothesis suggests that the organization of the syntactic constituents in a sentence reflects the underlying cognitive structure of how arguments participant in an event relate to the action or even described by the verb. According to this hypothesis, the order and arrangement of arguments in a sentence are influenced by its semantic role and its grammatical relationship with the verb. And then these elements of meaning are usually stated explicitly in sentences, but sometimes they can be omitted. Arguments are usually thought of as elements of meaning that require a word to express a complete thought. When the lexical representation of a verb determines the address or destination argument, for example, like sense specifies the recipient, then the prepositional phrase will be assigned as the goal argument. And then limitation, criticism, and some alternative parsing theories. So construct retains the idea that parsing occurs in discrete stages, but adopts the idea that context can affect which structures the parser prefers, and the idea that the parser can sometimes build multiple structures simultaneously. Like the constraint parser, the race-based account specifies that the parsers can build multiple syntactic structures in parallel. And like garden paths and construction accounts, a race-based approach to parsing supports a two-stage process. Alternative parsing theory provides a different perspective and approach to sentence analysis and overcomes some of the limitations of the argument structure hypothesis. And then Parsing long-distance dependencies. So parsing long-distance dependencies is a challenging problem in natural language processing, which refers to the difficulty of identifying relationship between words in sentences that are separated by significant distances. And remote dependence can occur when a word or phrase in a sentence depends on another word or phrase that occurs much earlier or later in the sentence. Unraveling distance dependencies is a challenging problem in natural language processing, which refers to the difficulty of identifying relationship between words in sentences that are separated by significant distances. So semantic parsing involves engaging sentences into a formal representation of their meaning, which can help identify a relationship between words that are not immediately apparent from the surface structure of sentences. Okay, so I think just that's all for me. Thank you and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.